time. Woo woo! So the Renaissance. So this is kind of just Renaissance in general. 1330 to 1530 means rebirth. Used first time in 15th century. Everybody has his own definition. Bizzarri, art of an old man of a genius. New ideas. Italy divided into states. Why Italy was Renaissance born? Had plagues like everywhere else. Italy recovered sooner though, especially northern Italy. It recovered quickly. It was in the path of the Crusades, and the Crusades brought last works of Greeks and Romans. 12th century and 13th century people studied Roman law. Lost work found. Italians had ruins and buildings, ancient sites, knew it had to do with the past. People put salvation first. People didn't really care or think about ruins. Roads and walls built by Roman army. Geography. Italy, center of east and west trade. Businesses prospered. Location is ideal, rich, wanted more luxurious stuff. New wealth and new ideas. Very good at trade. Trade in ships. Big trading companies. Contracts with king. Shipping nation. New method of sales. Sales brought year-round trading. Explore society. Education and the impact of printing. Sorry, I ran out of ink on these, so. Liberal studies, history, moral, philosophical, eloquence, astronomy and music. Focused on men. Only small percentage of men. Individuals important. Broad beginnings. Education of women. If born into wealth with brothers, often would educate women. Educate was about support in family and spouse. Men get married late, and young woman, single mom's father died off. Raised sons as Renaissance men. Male dominated. Aim of education was to create a complete citizen. Prior to printing press, people copied by hand. One Bible used 300 sheepskins. Long process but beautiful. Printing makes big influence. Transforms lives. Change government and how businesses run. Sort of like stamps. Oh no, I have that. But it's sort of like stamps. China influenced massive block printing and paper. Johannes Gutenberg, movable type, 1445 to 1450. Gutenberg's Bible, 1455 or 1456. The spread of printing. By 1500, 350,000 books were printed. By 1600, 200,000 books were printed. Great effect on scholarship. Everyone could have same copy, like in schools, and you wouldn't have to share. But sharing is caring, but yeah, share. Get rapid solutions to problems. Errors sometimes on handwriting. People made books accurate. More access to books/knowledge. From common identity, standardized text. No written word replying on oral. Bridges gap. There's a gap between oral and written cultures. Saved a lot of information. New separation of metals. Large mining operations to produce copper, iron, silver. Rich minerals in Central Europe, Hungary, the Tyrol, Bohemia, and Saxony. Iron production contributes to firearm development. Florence regained banking tactics due to Medici family. Medici expanded from cloth into commerce, real estate, and banking. Best days were in the 15th century. House of Medici, greatest bank in Europe. Branches in Venice, Milan, Rome, Avignon, Bruges, London, and Lyons. Family had interest in industrial enterprises. Medici, principal bankers for the papacy. Big profits influenced papal court. Suffered decline at end of century due to poor leadership and a series of bad loans, especially uncollectible loans to rulers. 1494, French expels Medici from Florence and confiscates their property. The Medici financial edifice collapses. Social change in the Renaissance. Social structure from the Middle Ages. Divided into three estates. The first, the clergy, whose preeminence was grounded on the belief that people should be guided to spiritual ends. The second state, the nobility, whose privileges were based on the principle that the nobles provided security and justice for society. Third estate, peasants and inhabitants of the towns and cities. The nobility faced declining real incomes. Expense to maintain noble status was rising. Old nobility member survives. New blood, like new nobility, infused their ranks. Reconstruction of the aristocracy, underway in 1500. 2 to 3% of population was nobility. Held military and political positions and visiting king. 16th century aristocracy pursued education to maintain role in government. The Book of the Courtier, Handbook to European Aristocrats. 3 basic attributes. Graceful character, participation in military and bodily exercises. Classical education, adorn life with arts by playing music, drawing, and painting, and expected to follow a certain standard of conduct, to serve prince. Peasants and townspeople, 90% of population, except in highly urbanized areas of northern Italy and Flanders. Thousands or so years between the end of the Roman Empire and their own era constituted a middle period, the Middle Ages, characterized by darkness because of its lack of classical culture. Historians in 19th century, like Jacob Burckhardt, created the modern concept of the Renaissance. Burckhardt portrays in book Italy in the 14th and 15th as the birthplace of the modern world. Italians, first born among the sons of modern Europe. Distinguishing features: perfecting of the individual, worldliness of the Italians. Burckhardt exaggerated the individuality and secularism of the Renaissance and failed to recognize the depths of its religious sentiment. He established a framework for all modern interpretations of the period. Much continuity in economic, political, and social life. Northern Italy in mid-14th century, mostly land of independent cities. These city-states became the centers of Italian political, economic, and social life. Wealth created new possibilities for the enjoyment of worldly things. Slow process of recuperating from the effects of a Black Death, political disorder, and economic recession. Revival of classical antiquity. Middle Ages preserved much of ancient Latin cultural affected activities as diverse as politics and art, and led to new attempts to reconcile the pagan philosophy of Greco-Roman world with Christian thought, as well as new ways of viewing humans. 15th century was a period of significant political, economic, artistic, intellectual change. Age of rebirth, restoration of arts and letters to a new glory after they've been neglected. Michelangelo is a big figure. Michelangelo is a great Italian artist in the early 16th century. Pope Julius II, warrior pope. Michelangelo's temper and Pope's temper led to loud fights between the two. Pope hired Michelangelo to paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel in Rome. Difficult task for Michelangelo. He usually was a sculptor. Michelangelo took up project but refused people to see it when it was being worked on. Pope Julius II grows anxious. Michelangelo said it would be completed when it satisfies him as an artist. Pope said if Michelangelo didn't finish it soon, he would be taken out of the project. Western art of Michelangelo. Birth of the classical civilization of the Greeks and Romans. Renaissance, French word, means rebirth. 1350 to 1550 in Italy. Rebirth of antiquity or Greco-Roman civilization, marking a new age. Emphasis on individual ability. Florence architect Leon Battista Alberti expressed it as, men can do all things if they will. High regard for human dignity and worth. Realization of individual potentiality created new social idea of the well-rounded personality. Primarily the preserve of the wealthy upper class, who constituted a small percentage of the population. Italian Renaissance product of an elite rather than a mass movement. Indirect impact on ordinary people, especially in the cities where accomplishments of the period were most visual. So it was like mostly for the elite people. European economy gradually recovers as the volume of manufacturing and trade increased. Economic recovery. Italian merchants sailing throughout Mediterranean. Venetian Flanders fleet maintained a direct sea route from Venice to England and the Netherlands, where Italian merchant and came in contact with increasingly powerful Hanseatic League of merchants. Because of because Italians lost commercial preeminence while the Hanseatic League continued to prosper. 13th century northern German coastal towns formed commercial and military associations known as the Hansa or Hanseatic League. By 1400, more than 80 cities belonged to the League, which had established settlements and commercial bases in many cities in England and Northern Europe, including Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. For 200 years, Hansa had monopoly on Northern Europe trade in timber, fish, grain, metals, honey, and wines. South outlet in Flanders, port city Bergs, became the economic crossroads of Europe in the 14th century. Served as a meeting place between Hanseatic merchants and the Flanders fleet of Venice. In 15th century, silting on the port caused the Bergs to enter a slow decline. Hanseatic League increasingly unable to compete with the developing larger territorial states. Trade recovered from economic contraction of the 14th century. Italians and Venetians, despite new restrictive pressures on their eastern Mediterranean trade from the Ottoman Turks, continued to maintain a wealthy commercial empire. 16th century transatlantic discoveries give new impatience to states along the ocean. I think that should be important, but yeah. Italian city-states began to suffer from the competitive advantage of their ever-growing and more powerful national territorial states. Wooden industries of Flanders and the northern Italian cities are devastated because economic depression patterns of manufacturing in the 14th century. 15th century woolen industries began to recover. Italy expands silk, glassware, hand-worked items, and metal and precious stones industries. Other new industries, printing and mining and metallurgy, began to revive textile industrial industry in importance in the 15th century. So, the Medici Bank kind of collapsed, and trade recovered, and my phone's vibrating, and there was new industries such as printing, mining, and metals, and economic recovery, and there's an emphasis on individuals. Thank you.